So the Big Bend Coalition is the agency, or is the organization, I should say, here in Florida's Panhandle that has a whole array of people who are regularly part of our efforts. So we meet quarterly, we do networking. When we were in person, it was great to be able to see each other, but we still do that online. We welcome anyone in our community, whether or not you're an agency like STAC, law enforcement, social services. One time I remember somebody attending and saying, look, I'm a member of the community. I'm retired. I just want to learn more about trafficking. You are welcome to BBCAT. Kelly Doherty, who's with the U.S. Attorney's Office, is the point person for BBCAT. And she is the one you would contact to be on our mailing list, as well as to, there's her phone number. Our next meeting coming up next month is May 6th at 2 p.m. And to get information about how to join, you'd contact Kelly. I will tell you that as co-chair of the coalition, it's been really important for us to focus on what this last point is, which is what can we all do to build enough trust in what we do and who we are in the community, so that survivors will come forward for the support they need. And that could be a survivor who is recently out of a trafficking situation, or someone who might have been trafficked 10 years ago. We know that the impacts of trafficking are lifelong, and we're here to help all of us at the Big Bend Coalition. So STAC is the agency that I'm honored to be the executive director for. We assist survivors of sex and labor trafficking, adults and children, people who are from this country, people who are immigrants, anyone who is a victim or survivor of human trafficking. And also we work with people who are at risk of being trafficked. We do case management directly. We do this in coordination with our community partners. Our victim assistance director and case manager is Graciela Marquina. She's a social worker, and she's amazing. And we work really closely also with the International Rescue Committee to do case management for victims. Now, I'll tell you too, just as a side note, as I was doing a monthly report this month, I realized that this month we have the largest caseload we've had since we started 6 years ago. And I really think this is a function of the increased vulnerability that we're all seeing on account of COVID-19 and the economic crisis that it has wrought. And I'm not surprised to see that, but I will tell you, it is very impactful, and we are feeling it in our nonprofit, as many nonprofits are. The way we do our work successfully is with partners. We're delighted to be partnering today with Selah, and we look forward to continuing that collaboration. But I'll tell you, the only way we do this is work with many people, and whether it's nonprofit, business community, with people in the faith community. And that's how we make sure we can do whatever we can to assist survivors and support them on their journey. We've been working over the last several years to do outreach into our rural areas. Our focus is in the 2nd Judicial Circuit, or the DCF 2nd Region, which is the 6 counties essentially that are part of that, all around Tallahassee, Leon County. And we do public awareness as well. One of the things that we're really, really excited to do all the time is to tailor and develop training specific to agencies. We recently trained at the Big Bend Homeless Coalition, and working with both people who work directly with single moms, or veterans, whatever it is. We really want to help spread the word about what human trafficking is and what you can do. One of the things I'd really love to share with you, and here's our website. I'm going to mention it a couple of times, but encourage you to go on to our website for a couple of reasons. We developed recently a toolkit that gives all of you who are interested the opportunity to share. In fact, we'd love it if you would look at our toolkit and maybe share one of the social media pieces. We've got graphics and sample captions just saying, hey, attended a training today, it was great. So people know that we're out there doing this and more people can learn about it. We've developed a poster, which, as you might have known, over in January, a law went into effect to require every healthcare facility to post the national hotline information. We also have that information about how you can download a poster that's in compliance. And we also have those posters available for anybody in any workplace. Frankly, every workplace should know that there is a national human trafficking hotline number. Get that information in English and Spanish at least, and have all people who work there know that. We've made our website accessible, and also all of our services and support are free of charge. We really, we do that. And of course, no surprise, there's a donate button on our website if you do want to support us, because we do like to keep all of our services free. We would love it. So know that that's available for you too. This is an example of one of the things in the toolkit. It's a flyer that some of our partners in for example, the Big Bend AHEC, which is the Rural Health Network here locally, have included this flyer, which is, if you'll notice at the very top, it asks key questions about someone who might be trafficked, but it doesn't even use the word human trafficking, because frankly, a lot of people who are trafficked will never identify or might not identify themselves as fitting that legal definition and in that reality as we've labeled it, but they might be working without pay. They might be forced to work. They might be lied to, they might be tricked, all of these things. So what we like to do is to depict as many different individuals as possible, because as you know, human trafficking can happen to anyone who has any vulnerability. And also to know that there's help available. We did this, and we've done some other work, by the way, with the help of the Leon Cares Grant. This is funding that came down to our county through the federal government to assist with COVID relief. And I mentioned that too, because we noticed both with the isolation on account of the pandemic, and as I mentioned, because of the economic impact of that pandemic, more people have been made vulnerable to being trafficked. And certainly both in our area and around the nation, we've seen, particularly with children who are online more, that there's great vulnerability. And so we're really grateful for this. And we know that it's important to kind of get the word out and again, have the questions, have the information be available, so anyone who might be vulnerable or might know someone who's vulnerable can reach out for support. Okay, so today our presentation is one that I'm very much looking forward to and want to introduce you to our panel. First, let me tell you that I had the opportunity to work with Selah Freedom and Selah Way Foundation a couple of years ago, doing training in a couple of the rural counties just west of here. So I've been very impressed with the work of Selah for some time and have been grateful to be working with them. In fact, one of the things that is such a nice synergy is, even since that time, a rule has been developed through the Florida Department of Education that creates this requirement really for schools to train on this issue. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but first, let me just tell you about our presenters. First, Kyra Monteque, who is the Southeast Prevention Coordinator for Selah Freedom. Kyra has spent 7 years working for the public school system, and her goal was to ensure that the success of all children, regardless of background, is assured. Since coming on board with Selah Freedom in 2017, she carries the same passion she had in the classroom with her work to prevent and equip not only children, but also adults with knowledge that's needed to end sex trafficking and exploitation. In her current role, she's able to create the trainings and curriculum needed to bring this awareness forward, and also to train and speak on the problems that young people face and what adults can do to be part of the solution. Also with us today is Shannon Meyer, who, as you can see, is the Speak Up curriculum developer, and they're going to talk to you about the Speak Up program. She's an educator turned teacher advocate, also with a passion for empowering teachers and parents with knowledge and freedom of being trauma informed and creating all access instruction. As an educator from inner city Los Angeles, she transitioned to a role as an instructional coach and watched teachers and school leaders respond with tremendous enthusiasm to the knowledge about how the brain works and how it impacts learning and student interactions. In addition, receiving training and certification under the Gates College Ready Promise Grant, Shannon is skilled at identifying the most powerful levers of success for planning, instruction, and classroom management. using the power of the whole child approach to education, as well as other training in positive discipline and cognitive coaching. She's been able to empower teachers and school leaders to know their students more deeply and respond rather than react. This knowledge is also empowering to students as they learn how to better listen and communicate with each other. Elizabeth Fisher Good, our third speaker, became a leader in the anti-sex trafficking movement by co-founding Selah Freedom. She's been instrumental in providing freedom to nearly 10,000 survivors since 2011. And out of Selah Freedom, another dream was born, which is the Selah Way Foundation, created in 2018, that collaboratively brings together the leading organizations across the US and globally to provide for best practices and proven models to eradicate sex trafficking and sexual abuse. 3 initiatives work together to achieve this goal of prevention, protection, and provision. Elizabeth is a passionate pioneer and inspirational thought leader with a desire to expose the root of the issues behind sex trafficking and child sexual abuse. She's the author of Groomed, HarperCollins 2020. And by the way, I'm looking forward to reading that, Elizabeth, which recounts her own story of loss, trauma, and triumph. Fisher Good dedicates her life to helping women from all backgrounds discover how to live free from past traumas, strongholds, and the lies that they've been groomed to believe about themselves. I want to mention too, so much has been done, and Elizabeth, you're a true leader here. One of the things in your bio I want to highlight is the concept is a Selah, or a time for rest and reflection that helps explore active ways to forgive and move forward toward a whole level of freedom. Elizabeth has been recognized in many different forms for her work. SRQ magazine, in their article Fight for the Innocents, describes her as part healer, part businesswoman, and all resolve. If Selah Freedom is bringing light into the darkness, as the slogan says, then Fisher is the one behind the megawatt. She's the recipient of the prestigious New York City Global Business Leader Award and Tampa Bay's Businesswoman of the Year. Oh my gosh, so much talent we're about to have today. Welcome everybody. And I want to do one little preface slide for us on our topic before I turn it over completely to you. And this is kind of a larger context. And I promise you, I'm not going to go all kind of lawyer wonky on you, but I want to give you some foundation, everybody, for why we're here. Not exactly why we're here, but an impetus for why we're here. So we know that the Department of Education in 2020 developed rules that required every school to develop a plan, an implementation plan for how they were going to educate students around human trafficking. And I'll tell you, I don't know that I present ever where someone doesn't say what's going on in the schools. And so this is why we're here today, to talk about what is going on and what could go on. Plans have to be submitted annually. And also you should know, and I did some research just this morning to give you the latest updates on, you might know a rule is just a rule and can be changed kind of easier than a law can. And there is a bill, and I think it's probably at least the 3rd year in a row, there's been a bill in the legislature to require there to be this education on human trafficking. There are a couple of these legislative initiatives this year, and this is just to inform you so you know. This year it's Senate Bill 1094 and House Bill 519. It looks like those are moving through their respective houses, and they will require, as part of health education for students, that they include age-appropriate developmentally K through 12 education on a slew of topics, including the prevention of child sexual abuse, exploitation, and human trafficking. So again, those are 2 bills, Senate Bill 1094 and House Bill 519. They look like they're moving. The other bills that were filed, and I'll just tell you this, House Bill 1303 and Senate Bill 554, they were more explicit about talking about the elements of what should have been included in the training for human trafficking. Not crucial. I think, having a bill passed that requires this, or a law in place, would be a very good thing. Here on this slide is information about where you can go. If you go on this Department of Education website, you'll see that there's information by Florida Department of Education about human trafficking. Michelle Gaines, who has been a hero in this field forever, I know was instrumental in creating that, and Valerie Ellery. Kudos to both of those really fantastic leaders to have that page in place. And then the last point I want to end with is this. I think we've done a lot over the past several years to promote awareness of human trafficking. And really, I think a lot of people are aware that it's there. Not everybody, but for the most part, it's getting better. What we need to be focused on so much now, excuse me, is what we can do. What actions can we take? So this particular website shows where you can go. And I see in the chat, we have information. I mean, we have people from all over the state. So I did some research with our team to figure out what the 6 counties in our community have been doing in terms of their education on human trafficking planning. And I will tell you, it's frankly, it's soup to nuts. We have some very complete plans. We have people mentioning it. We have counties articulating that. And we have 2 of our 6 counties that we can't find any information about. I'll tell you also, we went on that website, we went into the school's administrative pages. And what we found was it was really, really hard to find this information about human trafficking. Even when you typed in, as a keyword, human trafficking or trafficking, you couldn't find it. You had to put in child protection or child safety, and then maybe you saw the human trafficking piece, and that's not right. I mean, in my opinion, you need to be able to find out, you're a parent, you're someone who cares about kids in your jurisdiction. Finding out this information should be easy. It should be straightforward, and you should be able to talk to your elected representatives, superintendent, school board members, and say, what are you doing to protect our kids from human traffickers? So I really encourage this as a point of action for everybody, that you're, a lot of you are already aware, of course, that we have something called human trafficking, but what you can do vitally is to look up what your county is doing. And if you're not happy with it, if you're not, I can tell you, after doing research and prep for today, we're going to be calling quite a few of our superintendent's offices and offer our services and help, right? So that they can get this done. And also be looking at, of course, to some guidance from Selah. So let's get going. Thank you all for being here.
Hi, everybody. And Robin, thank you so much. If we were like in a live audience, I'd be like, everybody, isn't she great? Let's give her a round of applause, right? She's so excellent. We appreciate this platform, and there's no more important work to me, quite honestly. I'm going to give you just a little bit of a background on what we've done over the last decade. That gives us the credibility and the credentials to be standing here speaking to all of you with a very excited and passionate heart and mind. So I am one of the founders of Selah Freedom, which we launched a little over a decade ago. So we were based out of Florida, and then we had some work up in the Midwest as well, in the Chicago area, and then sort of around the country, different arms. But one of the arms that we launched, in addition to doing residential and outreach and creating, one of the first prostitution court diversion courts and all of the education that we've done over the years through Selah Freedom, we launched a prevention arm. And that prevention arm was my biggest heart and passion, because quite honestly, once you work in the safe housing and the restoration business, as many of you do, when we started the prevention arm, it was because, for years we spoke about the work that we did with child sex trafficking. And I'm pretty certain that everybody on this Zoom call, you're all experts in your own areas, and everybody knows what we're dealing with. But, to put it in a nutshell, the fact that, the stats are all over the place. Some people say 1 out of 3 little girls, 1 out of 5 little boys. Some say 1 out of 10 children. Regardless, it's horrific that there's this secret making that's being established. This is America. If we were talking India, Cambodia, Romania, it's a different story of the pathway to sex trafficking. But here in America, that our story is, our children are being taught how to keep secrets. They're being taught how to keep the secret of childhood sexual abuse. And it's typically at the hand of somebody that should be telling them and teaching them what love is. So there's great confusion. I think we've all heard of, when love and abuse are mixed, how difficult it is for someone's worldview and for them to come out knowing what is what and what side is up, right? So for little kids that are abused, and typically it starts 3, 4, 5 years old, and they keep that secret, by the time they're 11, 12, 13, typically the stats say 12 to 14. In our program over the years, the youngest said when she was 11, she literally said, whatever is on the streets had to be better than what was happening in her bedroom every night with her dad and her brothers, and she ran away. And the stats tell us within 48 hours, 80% of children, these little kids running from horrific to what they hope will be freedom, within 48 hours, any zip code in Florida, wealthy or not, any zip code in America, wealthy, white, Black, Hispanic, doesn't matter. Then 48 hours, 80% are approached by a trafficker who literally just has to say, are you hungry? You need a place to stay? I bet your parents didn't love you. I'll love you. And they're still longing for that. This little girl said at 11, when she ran away, the first guy that came up to her was like a 50-year-old man, looking to buy sex with her. And he said, I'll give you $10 if you have sex with me. And her 11-year-old mind that had been used for sex every week by her dad and her brothers, right? She's like, this is great. It's not my dad. I'm going to buy McDonald's. This is fantastic. But then the second man that approached her was her trafficker. You know, they say Romeo pimp or a gorilla pimp. And this guy was a Romeo at first that turned into a gorilla, and he ran her for a good 10 years. We got that girl. She was one of our very first intakes into our sex trafficking home about a decade ago. And she had been on the streets for about 8 years. The stats say they're sold 15 to 40 times a day, and typically are in the life for up to 7 years before they die or incarcerated or just out there recruiting new 11-year-olds. So we brought her in, and by the time we brought her in, the laws used to be every 3 misdemeanors, they used to arrest these kids for prostitution, was a felony. So the undoing of what needed to be undone, and still over the decade, the thousands and thousands, over 10,000 survivors we've worked with over the last over a decade. And everybody, they say the stats are 92% of sex trafficking survivors survived childhood sexual abuse. I could tell you 100% of the girls that we've worked with at Selah Freedom. So when we started Selah Freedom back in the day, this is sort of an overview to help you know where we are now. We launched these 4 arms, and the prevention arm has always been my passion, because I'm like, if we get this to put this out of business, all day long we win. And so we've gotten up to maybe training 20, 25,000 kids a year at a great year. COVID, just everything out the window, forget about it, between the different markets just of the Midwest and in Florida. That's a small number. So we're like, how do we grow that number to 2 million? So back a decade ago when we started Selah Freedom, we also had the vision for the Selah Way Foundation. And the foundation acts as an umbrella to the movement, because there's so many individuals, you guys know, look around the state of Florida, individual organizations, everyone's working in their own silo, a little hamster wheel, and, you know, operating on a probably small budget, working hard for every dollar, afraid someone's going to get the money and not them. We wanted to be an umbrella of funding to fund the best of the best. Who can we have lock arms to fight this? You know, if organized crime is organized, the good guys over here, we got to get organized. So the passion that we had was, we're going to need this provision. So Selah Freedom's the domestic model that we're endorsing, and anybody that's starting an organization, Selah will mentor them. Their goal is not to start more Selah Freedom, but to mentor others to be your own amazing organization. We have another model that we endorse out of Europe. It's out of Romania. It's called Uncaged. So we have 2 models there, international and domestic, of housing that we endorse. And then we have protection, because we need to teach law enforcement and healthcare how to find and know what they're looking at. So we have that arm. But then we're over here with what we're talking about today, where we're like, how do we take the best of the best? Selah Freedom had great curriculum. There was other great stuff. We've worked with a lot over the years. We boiled this into the best that we could find of a train the trainer model, because quite honestly, one organization, one team, one staff, they're not going to get the world trained. But if we build, our advisors were like, how do you go from 25,000 to 2 million? How do you get every single person in a school system trained? For me, you know, I was sexually abused as a child. I didn't see it coming. It was by a favorite uncle. It came out of nowhere. And then after that, my guard went down, my self-esteem went down. And then I found myself in a situation where I was drinking just to not feel it. And then I was raped, and I almost failed out of high school. And the school didn't have eyes to see what had happened to me. I was labeled a bad girl, a problem girl. I was promiscuous. I just went off the rails from an honor student to chaos. And nobody really understood or cared for whatever reason. Like the security guards, they felt like a safe place to me. And for some reason, they sort of saw me, and I was able to talk. And through confiding in them a little bit, they never knew what happened to me, but they took compassion for me. And they helped me get out of high school. I barely graduated high school. You know, I have my master's degree today, but I almost didn't make it. But what we know is this prevention curriculum that we've done with Selah Freedom. It's, you know, within the guidelines of Department of Education. It is DCFS approved. DCF, different states have different acronyms. It is stellar. It starts kindergarten through 12th grade. It matriculates every year with the children. we turned it into a train the trainer. We scoured the country. Who's the best curriculum team? We already had great trainers here. Kyra, who I'm going to turn this over to in a second. Brilliant. She comes out of the education world. She's been leading this on a Selah Freedom level where the trainers actually go in themselves and bring the training to the classrooms. We now went and found a national curriculum team headed up by Shannon, who you'll also hear from today. So I'm bringing you educators, and I'm going to bow out in a second because I'm not an educator, but it's important for you to understand the backstory. The reason that there's many reasons that we created the Train the Trainer, because we just want to multiply it. We want it absolutely everywhere. I was in DC and our congressman's like, Elizabeth, now this is big enough. Let's write a bill. Let's go. So we had Florida, we're here. We were part of the first federal mandate, the first state level mandate. Now we're part of a federal mandate that hopefully will be rolling out. So we're ahead of it here in Florida. So you guys are like the leaders, and we want to give you all of the tools. We're not about hoarding our gifts. We're about giving them away. And the other reason I call this to action so hugely is because now that it was a rule, you're watching all of these curriculum companies, right? Anybody that publishes any sort of educational curriculum, they're like, oh, well, we'll make a human trafficking one. We'll make money off of it. There's no wisdom in that. We've done it for 10 years. We know the words. We know what works. We know how to speak to a kindergartner. We know how to prevent this first grader from being groomed. My book's called Groomed. There's a whole lot of story, and I appreciate that plug, Robin. But there's just a pathway of children being silenced and being groomed to keep messages, to keep secrets. And our curriculum hits it on every level, every grade level. And I couldn't be more proud of it. So, I've shared a little bit about who we are, what we come from, how we turn this into the Train the Trainer model now. I think the stats, everybody knows what I shared in the story there, but the fact that now so many schools are still online, and the statistics tell us that 1 out of 9 children are being groomed right in your own home. It used to be like, oh, stranger danger, don't let your kids out, don't talk to anybody that you don't know. They're in their bedrooms on these things, and we don't know who they're talking to, and these guys are presenting, and 1 out of 9 of them are being groomed and coerced right under your eyeballs, and they don't know what's happening, and parents need the tools, and the students and the parents all need to be equipped. And so the other stat that I wanted to share with you is that the American Academy of Pediatrics released a report that 92%, I can't remember, I might even have this wrong. It might only be 75%. It's a ridiculously high number, but of 4-year-olds are given a smartphone, and they're given these smartphones with parents not even knowing that they come preset to explicit. They don't know how to block things. Our kids are so at risk. So we're so honored and so excited that you guys are sitting in, and we are ready after everyone speaks today. If you want to have, a conversation, a phone call to get this in, to meet with your superintendent in your town. I mean, starting at the top. As the CEO, I could tell you, if I give someone a yes, boom, it rolls through the organization. If you start on a lower level with a teacher or a counselor, it's harder to work your way up. So starting here and getting districts to say yes is the way to protect our children. So we are very grateful. And without further ado, did I miss anything on my part, Kyra?
Perfect.
She's excellent. Her and Shannon, you guys are in for such a treat, and I'm just so proud of them. So I'm going to turn it over and sign off here, but thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time so much. So when I started collaborating with Elizabeth, I was a classroom teacher for many years, and then moved into instructional coaching and working with schools, particularly around professional development for classroom culture and classroom management, and using a trauma-informed model when working with students. So, just very practical things like offering students some level of choice when they're working on activities to drive up a sense of autonomy, or designing activities with the understanding that prior knowledge might have gaps in it because of lack of attendance and that type of thing. And so how can we design learning experiences that don't activate students if they don't feel like they have prior knowledge for the content? So these are the types of things that I've gotten an opportunity to work with teachers on. And I think for me, and for any educators who are on this call, or anybody who knows anybody that's an educator, they're exhausted. They're so tired. They're so overwhelmed. And, there are so many different really important things that we want our students and children to know. But the ability to get that information to kids a lot of times filters through schools, and, schools are stretched very thin. So when I got an opportunity to partner with Elizabeth on this, and then talk to Kyra, the great. Kyra's amazing. They're both amazing. These are like powerhouse women. The one thing that I really wanted to do was design something that had really high output with not a ton of input, simply because schools didn't have the capacity for that. So I like to call it your most powerful levers. So we are our most effective when we can be really strategic about what it is we're doing with kids in schools. So what I did is I took the curriculum and then I backwards planned from student outcomes to design a train the trainer model. So the way that it works is you have your student outcomes, which are the curriculum. They're measurable and they include all of the material so that teachers can just roll out these lesson plans. But I've backwards planned from that for a learning experience for teachers from school leaders. So school leaders will work through a facilitation guide to educate their teachers on what the teachers will be doing with students. But the way I've designed it is that it's a modeling based learning experience. So the idea is that when principals go through or school leaders go through this learning experience, they are essentially walking the teachers through it. So when the teachers leave that PD experience, they can go into their classrooms and they're ready to go. They're not spending hours going through documents, trying to figure everything out. It's all right there. And then taking a step back from that, I have the onboarding process, which is a process designed for principals where they, and some of this is in the next slide, but we can stay on this one for a second, where, well, yeah, you can go here, either one's fine. Where school leaders are gonna become like Selah Freedom, safety, human safety, sex trafficking 101. So school principals are going to get this. It's in a nutshell. It's quick and easy to walk through. And then they have a step-by-step guide. I call them refillables. It's like a very easy guide that they're going to walk the teachers through. And then the teachers will go into the rooms and work on that with students. When I was designing this, I made sure everything was measurable. It followed the cycle of a basic learning plan. So we activate prior knowledge in students and in teachers. We build on that prior knowledge through extending it. Then we have an application period where we apply our new learning and then we reflect on our new learning. So it has the form of a very basic lesson plan. It's tight, it's clean, it's measurable. And the idea is that when students walk away, they feel really empowered, and principals and teachers and all school leaders, counselors can go, wow, like I did something really amazing for my students. And I did it in a reasonable bandwidth, particularly with everything that's going on right now. Teachers are overwhelmed. And so that was like really at the forefront of this. Also, something I want to say is that we've partnered with some researchers from amazing universities to really track data. I came sort of up in the data informed instruction era of teacher education. So I really made sure that we had things that were measurable with pre and post and learning experiences so that we can track data and really make sure that our students are moving towards proficiency on the information that's most empowering to them.
So the next part of what we want to be able to definitely do for you guys is kind of walk you through a little bit of the curriculum side of S.P.E.A.K. So you can see some of the details, and I want to talk you through some of those details. And I'm going to tag team this section with Shannon as well as our curriculum developer. And so one of the amazing things about S.P.E.A.K is that it's age appropriate. So we have differing levels of the curriculum, so that if I'm lower elementary or upper elementary, middle school, high school, I have a specific curriculum that's centered around that age group. So it's age appropriate, because when coming in at the lower level, let's say K through second grade, bringing terms like exploitation, sex trafficking, that's way over their head, right? So when we're coming in at the elementary level, K through second, this is one of the first pieces here, which is safety. And this particular curriculum is very interactive. We know that children at this age range, their attention span is not as long as maybe a middle or high school student. And so this curriculum has a really interactive coloring book that meets the needs of about 4 different sections. So we're going through safe adults. We're going through safe speech. We're going through safe touch. We're going through safe screens. And I'll talk more about those pieces in a little bit, but the coloring book itself caters to activities for each side of those topics. So that as kids are taking in the information from their instructor, they're also able to do an activity to then kind of solidify what it is that is being discussed. So students here are going to cover a range of topics that are age appropriate. And again, this safety curriculum has been created for that lower elementary student. So that's that K through second grader. So just to kind of give you a little bit of information in case you have a question or you're wondering, well, what's it on? Safety itself is an acronym that has been used for speaking against fear every time. So it's this notion of, how can we keep a child safe? Like, what is it that we need to be discussing or going over? And so one of the amazing things with this being interactive, a coloring book, there's activities that the kids are doing. My background is education. I spent many, many, many years in the high school setting, educating youth. And as a teacher, I feel like, we get to be super creative. One of the things I do as a trainer, because I have been working with this particular curriculum for a number of years now, is we've implemented like signing into a part of like the conversation. So as I'm teaching young kids about how to speak against fear every time, I'm also showing them what it looks like. So one of the first activities that I do with my K through second graders when I'm going into different schools is I teach them how to say speak against fear every time through signing. So I age appropriate, we're telling them that, put up their number 4 to show how you say speak and sign, the term for against, and we're putting it, I want to make sure you guys can see me, but against their chest so they can see that sign for against, what fear is, and then the sign for every time we use the sign always. And so that's something that throughout these different pieces, as we're going through what safe adults are, what safe speech is, what safe touch is, and what safe screens are, technology, because we know kids are learning how to operate smartphones younger and younger. We also have this thing that they can go back to, which is the signing of speak against fear every time. So it's really interactive. It's fun. I literally hear kids at the end of these trainings say, wow, it's over already, or can we learn more? Or that was so exciting. Like, these are their comments. I'm talking about kindergartners, first graders, second graders. And so we're teaching them these pieces, but we're teaching it fun. We're interacting with them every step of the way. I also want to show you a piece of, and again, this is a several page coloring book. This is just one of them about how we can have safety even when connecting with technology, right? So the idea behind this, and there's directions for this, and all of this is in this toolkit that's easily accessible, easy for an educator to go through. And I'll speak to the coaching aspect as we get to the end of just presenting each piece, because we're not handing this to anyone and then saying, good luck, go for it. As easy as Shannon has made it for the facilitation of this, we still want to partner and walk alongside you as you're implementing this inside of your classroom. And I keep saying schools because of this rule and this mandate that Robin spoke about in the beginning that we have in the state of Florida. But this can be used in community centers. This can be used in churches. This can be used anywhere where you want to bring this type of education to elementary, middle, or high school students, right? So this particular activity, this is just one of the coloring book pages where we're discussing with the kids about, apps, applications, what things should we be asking permission to use. And the premise behind all of this is that we want young kids to start learning that no matter what I want to do when it comes to technology, I need to go to my safe adult, which we've already discussed safe adults prior to getting to this piece and what safe adults are. And so I want to make sure that as a young person, I'm going to my safe adult and they always know what I'm doing while I'm using technology. So there's a learning piece for parents as well at the end of this, because they get to take the coloring book home. Kids get to show their parents or their guardians what it is that they've learned. And I have kids sometimes that say to me, well, Miss Kyra, I don't have to ask permission if I want to play a game. My parents don't make me. And so I'm encouraging the kids as I'm coming into the classroom, and I'm saying, you know what? I think it would be really awesome if you went to your parent or guardian and said, you know, Selah Freedom, Kyra, she came into our class, she educated us, and she told me to say to you, is it okay if I ask permission when using apps? So there's like an educational piece for the parents as well, because it is good practice to know what our kids are doing while they're using technology. And now the kids are feeling empowered at the end of this to actually go to their safe adult, their parent, their guardian, and say, you know, I want to start asking permission. I want you to know what I'm doing when I'm on my tablet, when I'm on the phone, you know, when I'm on gaming apps. And the kids, I'll tell you, they know these apps. When I'm coming into the classroom, you know, we've got different icons inside of the presentation that we use, the PowerPoint, that visual piece, and their name in all of them. So the kids know these, they know how to operate the technology, they know what's on it, and they're being connected with. Sometimes kids tell me stories, you know, they're gaming and they get a message from someone that wants to play with them, or it is like, oh, hey, come game with me in this room. I mean, there's so many different things that kids can do. So again, we want to open up and be able to have that conversation for youth in a safe space, which should be the classroom, with their teacher or the guidance counselor or whoever it is that would be implementing this sort of curriculum. And so as I'm moving forward, I want to just kind of touch on that 3rd through 5th now, which to kindergarten or 3rd grader, different levels, right? So yes, we're still identifying, you know, safe adults and safe speech and all of these areas that we want to make sure kids are understanding and they have, you know, the correct resources for, and any, you know, questions that they may have are being answered. But with this, again, interactive coloring book with the kids, they're covering these topics like body safety and trust triangles and online safety. And so I want to kind of just touch on a couple of these areas just really briefly for you. And so one of the things that the objectives for, first, I'll touch on safety, the objectives, the things that they're hitting. They're identifying the difference between safe and unsafe adults, because there are differences. The premise behind stranger danger is so old and outdated and makes no sense, because the reality is that a number of the survivors that we're working with, the first person to exploit, the first person to take advantage was someone that they knew. Right? So if we say stranger danger, then all we're protecting them from is people that they don't know. But what about the person they do know? So we're taking two categories now. We're saying safe versus unsafe adult. And during this presentation, during this training, during this curriculum overview that the kids are experiencing, we're identifying those adjectives, I like to call them as a English teacher background. I would say, what describes a safe versus an unsafe adult? And how do we feel? If there's fear behind that person that I'm thinking about, then that's not safe. That's not a safe adult. And I need to learn who my safe adults are and who I can go to if I ever feel unsafe. We're learning how to speak against unsafe scenarios by using, you know, safe speech. How do I communicate when I'm feeling unsafe? What do I say? How do I use my voice to tell a safe adult, you know, I felt unsafe or I felt scared, right? So we're actually practicing this during the training itself with kids so that they have that understanding. Just doing a couple of different practice scenarios, you know, I felt unsafe when, or that feels unsafe, or I'm scared, right? I literally had you tell me, you know, I've been scared before, but I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know how to articulate it. They didn't use the word articulate, but you guys know what I mean, right? They didn't know how to communicate that with someone else. Practicing those things can be a really empowering tool for a young person. Recognizing the body safety rules and that keeping our bathing suit zones are private areas, that people shouldn't be asking to see them. People shouldn't be taking pictures of them, right? And we're talking about unsafe situations. So we always want to put that word next to it, unsafe, right? If I'm scared or there's fear behind what a person may be doing, then now we're talking about an unsafe situation, because kids have parents and guardians that are going to bathe them, right? So they're going to see those private areas. They have doctors that they have to go to. So making it very clear for a kid as we speak against fear every time, they have an understanding that we're talking about unsafe situations, situations that scare me, situations that confuse me, situations that make me feel weird, and really driving that point home in every single section of the activity. It's a lot of repetition because at this age level, that repetition is going to be key for a better understanding of the topic and what we're talking about. And then finally, being able to identify a safe adult that they can talk to when they're in an unsafe situation. It's really important for a young person to understand that they do have multiple safe adults around them. There's not just one, right? And we've had people that have, young people that have come to us and said, well, survivors even, I told someone about the situation that I had going on. No one believed me. So I stopped talking about it. That's a problem, right? So when I go to the pause section, we use a term called a trust triangle. And we want young people to understand that there's a safe person at every point of that triangle. So if I go to one person and they don't believe me, or I still feel unsafe, there's a second person that I can go to. And we're talking about what these different people, who they may be even. I shouldn't just have safe adults at home, and I shouldn't just have safe adults in school. And I should have safe adults all around me. And who might these people be? Who's in my life that maybe I'm not even thinking about as being a safe adult? I was just in a middle school yesterday. One of the kids, middle school, right? 8th grader, not elementary. So if this is happening with our middle school kids, it's definitely happening at the elementary level. Middle school student asked, what if I don't feel like I have a safe adult around me? That was her question during the training. And we are not doing, at the middle school level, I was doing sex, lies, and media, which I'm gonna get to like pieces of that as well, because that is in our train the trainer model. But it's really interesting that an 8th grader had that question. Well, what if I don't feel like I have a safe adult around me? And so I asked her, I said, do you think that you could start to look at the adults around you through a different lens? Who is at this school that's here to protect you when you're here? So she starts naming teachers and counselors. And I said, have you ever gone to them? No, I've never talked to them about things I'm going through. What if you tried it to see how you felt? And she was like, yeah, I could go to my teacher and talk with them about, things. And I said, see how you feel after you do it. See if it makes a difference for you. And I left it there because I want young people to begin to think about maybe the adults that are around them in a different way. And I'm talking about an 8th grader who you may think would know, oh, go to your teacher if you find yourself in an unsafe situation. Go to a guidance counselor, go to a principal, but she's never connected in that way. And so she didn't really feel like she had a safe adult in her life, maybe at home or at school, but she hadn't looked at her teacher as being a safe adult either. And so that's why at the elementary level, we want to put those people into perspective and talk about the adjectives that describe them, because we all watch the news, right? We know that there are people that are out there that are in these positions that are still abusing and exploiting our children. Right? So then if I can identify the adjectives, even at a young age, like being an elementary student, that shows me, okay, this person's not safe because they are not aligned or walking with those words, those terms that I know to be true for what a safe person embodies. That's powerful, right? We're not scaring kids. We're not going through these trainings. And then at the end of it, they're shutting down. They don't want to talk to anybody. They're like, oh, I don't know who's safe and who's not because she's saying it could be someone I know. So now I'm scared to go to anybody. No. At the end of this, kids are feeling empowered. They're feeling like they have a voice. They're feeling like, you know what? There are people that I can go to. So then again, connecting on the pause level, just the objectives that we're hitting. We're recognizing the difference between an unsafe secret and a surprise, right? It's really important that we use the word unsafe before secret, because in our everyday, right? A parent may say, oh, don't tell this secret, but the secret may be something like mama's favorite color is blue. That's me and your secret. Does that secret scare you? Does that secret cause fear? Does that secret worry you? No. And a kid knows it. I use the example all the time when I'm going into classes. If I told you my favorite color is blue, how does that make you feel? That's cool. My favorite color is blue too, right? That's the reaction from the kids. So now I need to make sure that I'm identifying that a child knows we're talking about something unsafe, something that scares you, something that causes concern, something that gives you anxiety, causes fear, right? And at the beginning, just to go backwards for a second on the safety curriculum, one of the very first activities that we do is we talk about things that scare us. At the elementary level, being in the dark, I hear it all the time. Clowns, sharks, spiders, roaches. These are the topics that the kids are bringing up in the curriculum. So now they're able to associate, right, that scary feeling when a spider's around to the scary feeling of an unsafe person. I want them to be able to connect that. I'm doing that for them, but through activity, you see? So there is a level of understanding when I say unsafe secret, now they're saying, oh, okay. So if a person is telling me a secret, but it doesn't cause me concern, it doesn't give me fear, it doesn't cause anxiety, well, that's not what Miss Kyra was talking about. She's talking about something that causes those things. So there's clarification, right? Yeah.
Kyra, there's a little question here. I'm thinking you might want to incorporate it as you're speaking, which is how and do you teach kids who have disabilities about this curriculum? So let me just throw that in for you now.
Absolutely. And the brilliant thing about all of this is that we give that age range, K through 2nd, 3rd through 5th, but even when we're talking about a disability, whether it be mental or physical, when we say age appropriate, we use this curriculum, these trainings, we use them even with our students who may be at a middle school level or even high school, because we've used it there too, but their developmental ability is maybe at a lower level if we're talking about a mental disability. So they're still able to understand and get the pieces that they need on how to protect themselves and be safe, but it's catered to their mental ability. So it makes still a lot of sense for them. So even with those guidelines that we're showing you, K through 2nd, 3rd through 5th, if I know that the mental ability of the person that I'm connecting with is maybe at a lower level than their actual age, this would still be appropriate to use with them. I hope I've addressed that, but if I haven't, direct another question for me.
That's perfect. Thanks.
Awesome. And so again, hitting these objectives for pause, we're identifying body safety rules that keep that bathing suit zone private. We're naming 3 safe adults that we can go to for our trust triangle. These are activities and the objectives we're meeting. We're identifying how they can talk to a safe adult in feeling unsafe, right? And we're recognizing how they can be safe online, because kids are learning how to operate smartphones younger and younger. I have almost 2-year-old twin boys, and they know that when they see mama's phone, they can swipe on it and things are going to change. They know that the picture is going to change. They know how to end the phone call by pressing the red button. They're not even 2. So if we're talking about a kindergartner, 1st grader, 2nd grader, 3rd grader, 4th, 5th, 6th, they know too. So we have to have the conversation around technology. So these are just the first 2. These are the elementary. What does PAWS stand for, right? There's power in learning. All secrets can be told. Doesn't matter the secret. They all can be told. Even the one that doesn't scare us can be told, but especially the ones that cause concern or fear or anxiety. You are the boss of your body. We want kids to be empowered, to feel like, you know what? I'm in control of me. And there's a cultural position that can be taken on this too. I have a bilingual advocate who is Spanish. She does all of our trainings in Spanish. And one of the things that she speaks to is this cultural bias. In our community, it's rude if you don't kiss a person coming in, hug a person coming in, which I understand. I grew up in a family where you hugged, you greeted people. But what if we allowed our child to have say so in what that greeting looks like? What about a fist pound? What about an elbow? We're in the world of COVID, right? We're seeing these things now, but what if we let our child decide how they wanted to greet that family member and what feels safe to them, instead of making them or saying to them, oh, you have to do that. You have to kiss. You have to hug, right? If they're the boss, let's give them choice. And I know that's a whole societal shift, but I like to throw it out there, especially when I'm with adults who work with kids, adults who might have kids, just to think about that, because how that could change things if we just changed our way of thinking. Safe adults are there to help, and everyone can find their voice. That's what PAWS stands for. And through each piece of that, we've got directions that we give, that there's power in learning. So we're showing the kids our power, that all secrets can be told. So the things that people say shh about, those can be told. We're pointing to them, you're the boss of your body. You guys are in charge. We're pointing to the safe adults, which is usually myself and another teacher when they're in their room. these people are here to help you, and that everyone, we're pointing to everyone, I have them point to everybody in the room, everyone can find their voice. So there's little things that we do even at the 3rd through 5th grade level. But as an educator, if I have this toolkit in my hand, maybe there's other things that I could then do to build upon or further develop, to bring that interaction and that fun way of learning to my classroom, right? This is one of the work pages in the pause book as well. When we talk about body safety, we have them identify, the outlines of the 2 genders. We gave them a bathing suit. This is helping to reinforce that they have an understanding that these are the areas that are private, that people shouldn't be touching, that people shouldn't be taking pictures of. And again, with the notion behind that we're talking about things that are making us feel unsafe. And then again, because we tell them they're the boss of their body, one of the things that they get to do is write their name on the line, like a name tag. I'm the boss. Kyra is the boss of her body, right? And so we do these activities for each section of the topics that we're covering. We have a little activity or something that the kid also has to do, because we know there's many, many different ways to learn. And one of them is learning by doing. And when we're writing and when we're getting up and when we're using our hands and our motions, things are sinking in better, right? And I saw a couple of things pop in the chat that I don't want to miss.
Yeah, one of the things is how do you make sure that the trainers that are being trained are actually safe? Because we know that sometimes we have people attracted to children who are actually very unsafe.
Yes, absolutely. So here's the thing, because when we're handing this toolkit over to a school, if there is an educator, right? And I speak as an educator, so this is by no means to point a finger or to make it seem like there aren't wonderful educators out there, because there are, but there are a few, because we watch the news. Something just popped up in the county that I live in about a high school coach that was exploiting kids, busted in a trafficking ring, right? So here's the thing. If that high school coach was the person that was speaking about these topics to a kid, if I'm sitting in his class while he's doing these lessons with me, I'm feeling more empowered to go tell someone about him. If he's telling me that there are always safe people around me and that you have multiple safe adults and you should be using your voice, but he in turn is actually exploiting me or scaring me, I actually am going to feel empowered to then go speak to maybe one of my other safe adults about this person. Because what exploiter, right? What trafficker, what abuser is going to give you those keys? That's not the message that they speak. What they speak is, shh, don't tell anyone. This is your fault. But if I'm directly educating against those things, now what I'm doing is I'm putting the power in that child's hands, right? Because as an educator, they're not maybe coming into the school system. That's probably not the message they're trying to convey. But if they're forced now to then implement this type of curriculum, it goes against everything that they are. So that would be the hope in all of this, because obviously we know that not every adult that works with kids is a safe person. But if that adult has to speak directly to these concepts, that's really empowering. That's what the kid needs to hear, even if it's coming from that person who is unsafe, right? Interesting thought dynamic there as well. So then we go into middle school, high school, right? We have an amazing training that's titled Sex, Lies, and Media. This curriculum itself, in its name, it's intriguing. I can tell you from experience that kids come in and they're like, what? Sex, lies, and media, right? So even that in itself, and I know a lot of entities and even districts, they want to take the sex out of sex trafficking, but we can't, right? That's not the way to prevent, by sweeping it under the rug, that pretending like, well, kids, they don't know sex. Yes, they do. They know sex. They're watching pornography. And if we're not creating the safe environment and the safe space to have these conversations, then we're doing them a disservice, right? We are not doing our jobs if we're just trying to say, well, we can't say sex in schools, or we can't talk about pornography. Well, there's a direct correlation between sex trafficking and pornography. So this is a cutting edge multimedia presentation where youth are going to be educated on online recruitment tactics. They're going to be equipped with practical tools that they are going to be able to use to protect themselves. And so just to highlight the objectives here, We're learning about the difference between sex trafficking and exploitation, right? Because sexual exploitation and abuse, trafficking falls under that. So I need a person at this level, 6th through 12th grade, to have an understanding of what exploitation is, because sex trafficking is a form of exploitation, right? How sexual exploitation and pornography are directly linked, because nearly 50% of underage trafficking victims claim that pornography was made of them. I go into trainings and I ask straight up, I'm really raw, I'm uncut, I'm gonna give it to you the way that it should be brought, because why are we sugarcoating things for this age of a child that really already knows and has probably experienced more than they've ever told a safe adult, right? So when we're talking about sexual exploitation and pornography, if nearly 50% of underage trafficking victims claim that pornography was made of them, I just ask students, what is that? If a person is forced to do something sexual outside their will, what is that called? Rape, sexual assault, sexual violence, right? Kids call it for what it is. So then let's have a safe space inside of our schools to now discuss those things. Technology, tactics that are used by online predators, right? Online predator, I didn't say a stranger or the danger behind a stranger. People that I know that I'm connecting with, and people maybe that I don't know that I'm connecting with. And here's the thing, because I pose this when I do trainings. Is it easier or harder to trick a person that you know or don't know? It's easier to trick a person that we know. So if I'm taking cues from my media culture may not be showing me through the movies, through TV shows, that sex trafficking looks like someone that I may know. Someone that I may know may try to exploit. Someone that builds a friendship or relationship with me may be the person that I need to look out for warning signs for. My media culture puts out movies like Taken. Okay, the sex trafficking happened like a Liam Neeson Taken? Sure. But is that the vast majority of what trafficking looks like? No. So then if I'm taking from my media culture, what the media puts out, from the broadcast of news and what we hear and what we see, because we hear about the chains, the handcuffs, the ropes. Well, what about the non-physical mental chain that's involved with trafficking? Manipulation. That's not a physical chain. That's not something where I'm tied down. So when I'm posing to the youth and we're going through these trainings, which again, we're given the tools so the teachers can have these conversations. Now I'm thinking, oh, wait, there was just someone online that connected with me. I've been talking for them for weeks. I wouldn't call that a stranger. And they're telling me all the things I want to hear. If we get swept up in our culture of media, the love stories, the Christmas movies, right? We're missing it. So we have to have those conversations with our young people. We have to talk about the signs of abuse as well as characteristics of abusers. We have to have conversations around healthy versus unhealthy relationships and the characteristics within those relationships. We should be talking with our young people about how relationships are complicated and the unrealistic expectations of media and how it doesn't equate to reality. But if a child is not able to have this conversation in a safe space with an adult, then they could get blindsided. They could get swept up in exploitation because I wasn't aware. One of the things that we talk with our survivors about all the time is, what do you think could have been done to prevent the issue? What could have been done for you? What could have been said to you? And what keeps popping up is education. If I would have just known, if someone would have talked with me or created a safe space where I felt comfortable enough to tell them about this situation that felt weird, about the person that I connected with that I sent a nude to. Sextortion, right? It's a real thing. But if we're not bringing these topics up, if a child doesn't understand, how this happens and the way that it might look and the tactics that our predators and our abusers and our exploiters and our manipulators are using, and I like to use these words interchangeably because I hear kids say, oh, sex trafficking, kidnap by a trafficker. Okay, what's a trafficker? Well, I don't know. Okay, I'm talking about an abuser. I'm talking about a manipulator. I'm talking about an exploiter. What's exploitation? Let's define it. Let's make sure that we have clear understanding because Robin stated at the beginning that a person isn't going to identify themselves as a trafficking victim. What does that even mean, right? I had the privilege of taking part in a program, and one of the survivor speakers in the program was talking about how she was able to sit down with a person who was interviewing or engaging with a young child who was suspected of being in trafficking. They thought that she was being trafficked. And this person who was engaging with this young person was not trauma informed, right? She didn't have the right language. But she was the one that was engaging with this young person and asking them questions. First question they asked the child was, "Are you a trafficking victim?" What? Okay, so let me tell you the response. The young person says, "No, I ain't been in no traffic today." That was her response to, "Are you a trafficking victim?" Because that person couldn't even comprehend what that meant. So we have to be careful of our language. So through education, we can create that foundation for a child to be able to understand, first of all, what trafficking is, what a trafficker is, what sex trafficking is, what human trafficking is, defining exploitation, so that they have a clear sense of the realities and not what our media culture may present to us. But again, we have to have the safe space to be able to have that conversation. So we show them things like this, our media culture. This is just one little slide in the presentation that's in the toolkit. And we talk about the realities of this media culture, what information is being presented, right? Youth are spending so much time online, and we want to equip them with the tools that are needed to stay safe, right? In our society, images like these, we see them in movies, TV shows, magazines, affects girls, boys, men, women, doesn't matter, right? We know that sexual abuse and trafficking happen to people regardless of their gender, regardless of how they identify. But when we live in a media culture that shows gender in a certain way, that can be confusing and even more difficult for victims or survivors to speak up and speak out against this issue. And at the end of the day, regardless of what gender you are, we are allowed to speak up, right? Little plug there, because we need to speak up. We want the kids to learn how to speak up, hence the title of the curriculum. And so then we talk about the game and our social media. This is, again, just another preview slide, right? When we post on a chat, for example, we're often telling a story about our lives. Traffickers and exploiters can learn so many different things just by what we post, the information that we're putting out there, just to start a conversation with us. Even posting statements like, I hate my parents, a trafficker, an abuser, a predator, could see that and then connect. Oh, I understand what you're going through. I've been there. It can feel easier oftentimes for a young person to confess their secrets online. One of the apps that you see, Whisper, it's like a platform so that kids can actually anonymously, right, just say things from the heart. Well, what if we create those safe spaces, like in the classroom setting or in the community setting or in the church setting, wherever we may be implementing this type of curriculum? How much more powerful would that be, where they can actually connect with a safe person and have these conversations? It's an interesting thought. And so it's one that we have a conversation around with 6th through 12th grade, right? About media and these online apps that are so accessible. And I've had kids that will say, well, why gaming? Well, because we can connect with people while we game, right? We can interact with others while we're gaming. And a lot of times that can lead into other places where we're also connecting. And so
let me ask you a quick question. Somebody has, we've had 2 questions about TikTok and about using TikTok for awareness and in a positive way, because so many kids are on TikTok. Do y'all do anything on that, or do you want to address that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So for TikTok, we're not on TikTok, but one of the things I have done, and this is a part of, I always say, like, as educators, like, you get to be creative. I loved when I taught in the high school setting, because I catered my curriculum and what I got to develop with my kids to the generation of technology users. So one of the things I've actually seen in doing presentations in a number of different Florida schools is, I had a teacher, we were doing trainings in a social media class at a school, and she actually had her kids do awareness TikTok videos on any social justice issue. So one of the groups, because I had just came and did presentations with them, did human trafficking. So the kids actually created a TikTok about bringing awareness to human trafficking, which I thought was so interesting. But that's something that, as an educator, I had over 150 students. What if I had 150 students create awareness TikTok videos? Right? Like, what if that was across a district? That is, I mean, that's huge awareness. We at the end of this, I like for youth to feel empowered to be able to do something. And we do have young people that are like, well, what can be done? What can I do? How can I use my voice? Well, a social platform can be a great place to highlight social justice issues. Human trafficking just being one of them. I mean, they could do mental health, violence, abuse, whatever, right? So that's just one example that I've seen in a Florida school before that a teacher had her students do. So we're not directly on TikTok, but I've seen teachers encourage their students to create TikToks in awareness of social justice issues. And so the final piece I want to give you guys is just the Freedom for Teens, which is, again, it's catered to middle school, high school. This is a discussion-based training, education on common recruitment tactics used by traffickers, equipping them with tools at how they can protect themselves. Topics include, what is sex trafficking, vulnerabilities, because we know that all young people have vulnerabilities, and exploiters will use their vulnerabilities against them. Tactics, the demand, technology, relationships, all of these topics that should be discussed. So now it's like, okay, well, how do I discuss it? Speak Up gives those tools, makes it really easy for the facilitator to be able to have these conversations with their young people that they're connected with. This is just an example because there's a lot of scenario-based learning inside of Freedom for Teen. And so this slide just kind of shows you an example of, a background story. Mia, who's an 8th grader, what the kids do in this activity is they identify the vulnerabilities here, identify what may make them more susceptible to predation, right? And so there's several scenarios within this particular curriculum that can go through varying backgrounds, right? Age ranges, and then the kids can identify what things they see. And I can tell you, I've had so many students go through trainings like these and tell me a story that they dealt with or a peer dealt with that matches exactly with what the topic was, what the scenario was. So again, our kids, they're aware, they're dealing with these things. We just need to create those safe environments where they can then have these conversations and talk about steps moving forward. What do I do? And again, exploitation's that overall term. So we want young people to have an understanding that trafficking, sexual violence, pornography, or child abuse material, sex acts, these are all terms that are under exploitation. And we don't want a kid to be exploited. We don't want them to be trafficked, but we don't want them to be exploited either. And so finally, I leave you just in closing, and I want to leave room for some questions because I can be super long-winded. I'm very passionate about this. I've had the pleasure over the last several years to actually, I call myself like boots on the ground, going into schools and bringing this type of training. But I'm only one person and I work with a small team. And like Elizabeth said, we need to give other people the tools. You guys need the tools so that you can facilitate these conversations, because how do we go from reaching 25,000 to 2 million? Well, it's with your help. So contact information is present here. You guys can connect with us if you're interested in learning how to bring this type of curriculum into your location. If you want to facilitate these trainings, I will connect with you. We can talk about price. We can talk about coaching tiers, because again, we're not just handing you these tools and saying, go for it. We want to partner alongside of you. I want to come alongside. I want to help you with trainings. I want to answer questions. And so it really is a partnership that the Selah Way Foundation is looking to have with districts, with community organizations, with schools, with child welfare locations, all of you, right? Because you all can be a part of the difference.
Oh my gosh, that was great. And we have so many comments and questions and information. Somebody asked about getting copies of the workbook, Kyra, and I just want you to qualify how that's maybe part of the program, and
yes.
You kind of have to see it in context. So you want to talk about some of these pieces that you highlighted and if people can get them and how.
Yep, exactly. If you connect with us, you can go to the info piece at Selah Way. You can connect with me, Kyra, at Selah Way. all the pieces that you see, so the actual PowerPoint presentations, the coloring books, all of that is going to be in the Speak Up training. So that K through 12th grade, you get all of the pieces for that. And so if you connect, you want to use this, we can connect and talk about pricing for your area and what that looks like, and then getting you that information. If you're looking to do a preview, a highlight, I can always connect with you, meet, go through different pieces if you have further questioning, but best ways to connect with us. We also have our website as well. And so there's a lot of different ways you guys can connect and learn more if you do have further questions.
So let me also ask you this. Do you do this nationally, or is this just in Florida?
Yes, so this is national. Again, our concept was, how do we go from just connecting with Florida schools, and not all the Florida schools, just some, a few, and a few different districts, to statewide, nationwide, right? Beyond the state of Florida. And so this curriculum can be implemented wherever you're at. Zoom has made it great to be able to connect virtually. So even when we're talking about coaching and going through, so that you guys have a good understanding of how to then facilitate this, as a coach for the Selah Way Foundation, you get direct access to me, and we would do Zooms and really go through all the pieces so that you feel confident in delivering this information.
And do you have any idea, we heard some of this information, this is slightly off topic, but not exactly, where a lot of kids had to go online during the pandemic. And then afterwards, what we saw was the DCF numbers have gone down, right? So not as many people mandatory reporters were getting exposed to children and seeing, so that they could make those calls to DCF. Do you have any information about whether or not those calls to DCF are going up, even anecdotally?
So I recently was on, I connect with a lot of organizations that do this type of work. DCF in our area was on one of those platforms, and briefly discussed. So not, I would say all the numbers are probably not in as far as like research goes when it's COVID related. They were saying that the numbers weren't significantly different. But I would say that because we know young kids were having more access to screen time, there is a possibility that the numbers increased ever so slightly. And the thing about anything that's reported, if we're doing research on it, it's only going to be based off of, what is reported, what is put out there. And there's so much that goes undocumented and not talked about. And so I do feel like the reality is that COVID drove a lot of young people to more screen time, more social time, which then directly opens them up to connecting with individuals, whether they know them or don't know them. And so we don't have specific numbers on that, but you could say that the possibility is there that it increased.
Exactly. Some other questions are, somebody said, I'm a grandmother, and do you think my 9 and 7-year-olds would be able to understand this curriculum? And I answered, yeah. I mean, you all are tailoring it to age appropriate learning, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, can you talk a little bit too about, and if you know anything about this, I was having a hard time. The state of Florida, a lot of people can do this training, and we certainly have seen different groups come forward and say to schools they could do this training inside. Is there some kind of certification that you had to go through, or that will go through, or how does that work with the state? And what happens with people who maybe want to work with you all? How will they know that what you're doing is compliant with what the state is making each district do?
Yeah, so one of the things, we have been approved by the DOE. So that's the Department of Education in the state of Florida. As this rule or mandate rolled out, we were actually partnered with the DOE to help bring services to certain areas under grant funding with the DOE. So they've given us, their thumbs up as being an organization that has been doing this for many, many years, has training that has where there's like a evaluation system, data that supports feedback. I mean, there's a lot that's gone into this over the years. And so with that, for some of the districts where we're now able to connect and bring trainings on the Selah Freedom side, that was, for them, that was good. The fact that the DOE was giving that stamp and saying, okay, Selah Freedom is an organization you can connect with for those human trafficking prevention education pieces that you're looking for.
Great, great. And I think too, you know, we're kind of going forward as best as everybody can in getting this information out. I just wanted to do a little bit of a kind of a plug for the Sex, Lies, and Media presentation, and to also highlight that, yes, the word sex is in there, but I think a lot of parents and teachers and others that maybe in the community don't understand that the kids do know so much more than you think they know. We were actually brought in when we did that training together, we were brought in by the county health department because they saw that it is a health issue as well, that kids not only be safe, but they do have the knowledge to, you know, to respond, to be smart about this. So I really do endorse that that sector of your training, Kyra. I think that it's very realistic, it's down to earth, and I like that. You know, I'm a little older, but you know, you guys come in, you're really young, and you're talking the talk, and you know all the social media, and it's really the way that the students were able to relate to you. So that was good.
The beautiful thing with the Speak Up curriculum is, you know, schools can decide, like, it doesn't mean that every teacher in the school has to be facilitator of this type of program, but there can be a group that really, you know, focuses in on it and brings those presentations to the classroom. So maybe if I don't feel equipped as an educator to come and have this conversation, there might be a set of guidance counselors or a set of other teachers that have that personality that can really bring it and make it impactful for the students. So that's the great thing about the curriculum is it can be anyone can be the facilitator of this.
And it really is a train the trainer. Quinizia was asking, is it a train the trainer? Yes, it is. And my friend Quinizia was also asking, do we have access to those TikToks you said that were created spontaneously in that classroom? It would be so cool to see them.
I need to get those links from the educator again, and then maybe I can email that over to you, Robin, and we can push that out.
So everybody stay in touch with us, and we'll try to put them up on our website or on our social or something on that. So how can we get this education to students that are homeschooled? What do you do on homeschool issues or charter schools and others that may not be covered by the DOE rule? Like you say, but churches, everybody could do
everyone. That's the beauty. It can go to anyone because we do connect with charter schools, and we've had homeschool organizations that have connected. And so, again, remember, this is a train the trainer. So if a homeschool group is like, you know what, we want to bring this to the 50 homeschool kids that we have, there's those, whoever would be those facilitators or those decision makers that say we want to bring this in, can connect with the Selah Way Foundation and then implement that right into their location as well with ease.
Mm-hmm. And this might be something too we can think and talk about in the future. I would encourage everybody to, and what you all did, and I know we got folks from all over the state. Selah does partner with local anti-trafficking organizations like STAC is, so that when you go in, you're not just coming in and saying, here's this great thing, bye, see you later.
Right.
You're connecting with the local organization who's going to be carrying the weight for, you know, when you build it, they will come. You know, we know that happens. Kyra, Shannon, Elizabeth, I want to thank all of you and Selah for your time today. This was so information packed, and I think people are very excited about that this is out there, so we can do this. I want to reiterate to people, please, please, please go and find out what your school district and your school is doing or possibly not doing, and enlighten, advocate, inform, connect, and do all the things to make sure that people know that this is something that's out there. You know, get the information out there with Selah. There are other groups. Somebody mentioned another group that's also doing this, the Bar Foundation, I think. Know that this is just so critical to get into our schools.